Another week means another episode of Andor, which means another batch of Easter eggs to pour over as we longingly wait for the next. For every revelation about Andor's past, there's at least 2 new connections to the larger Star Wars world, and we're going to dissect each scene until we find them all. I'm Chris Goodmakers, and here are some things you may have missed in episode 5 of Andor. Beware spoilers ahead. Much like death and taxes, there are a few things in Star Wars that are inevitable. Those include, but are not limited to, lasers, fascism, and Technicolor milk. The latest episode opens with our favorite ex-cop, Cyril, chatting with his mom about having no future prospects, which I'm sure many of our viewers will find all too relatable. And what way to infantilize your jobless child than to lecture them while feeding them their favorite brand of intergalactic cereal with blue milk. Ever since the original movie, blue bantha milk has been a nutritional staple of intergalactic diets. You know, I'd live to see an in-universe documentary on how bantha milk is collected, pasteurized, and shipped across the galaxy. I want the Food Network, but in Star Wars. Get on it, Disney. With Mon Mothma's introduction in the previous episode, we get a glimpse of her double life as a member of the Imperial aristocracy and secret financial benefactor of the rebellion. Episode 5 of Andor introduces that she's leading a triple life. She's also a devoted mom, or at least she wants to be. With the way her daughter speaks to her, it's clear that her extra Imperial affairs keep her from being the mom that her daughter wants her to be. This is in line with how she was described in the various source books of the Star Wars Legends canon. Those source books mention Mon Mothma also having a son, Jobin, who would go on to die in the Battle of Hoth and The Empire Strikes Back. It's always great to see modern Star Wars bring in elements of the old canon, even if it's just the small stuff that doesn't impact the main story. Now, if only they'd give us a live-action Asajj Ventress from the Clone Wars series. This episode placed a larger focus on the characters peeling apart each other's layers, particularly Cassian and Skeen. As Cassian wakes up from his late night of studying, he notices that Skeen woke up early and looked through his bag. As Skeen begins to piece together Cassian's questionable background, he notices that Cassian's doing the same to him. He takes note that Cassian is the only person on their campground that can understand what his various tattoos mean.
Yeah, I saw your eyes go right to it.
Great head.
And the symbol on his right arm reading, by the hand. What's even juicier about this scene is the implication of those tattoos and their potential ties to the Legends canon. It's likely that the by the hand line is referring to a group called the Emperor's Hand, which are basically Palpatine's elite super spy task force. While the Emperor's Hand is still canon thanks to Rebels, it remains to be seen if Luke Skywalker's wife, Mara Jade, will make an appearance in the modern age. She had her own comic miniseries titled Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand, which was written by Timothy Zahn, creator of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Considering how Dave Filoni is eager to bring in all aspects of the Star Wars canon into modern shows, Mara Jade might not be too far off. Andor's gone to great extent to illustrate the life of the Imperial bourgeois, particularly through the interior design of Luthen's antique shop and Mon Mothma's Coruscant apartment. The pristine white and gold are simple shorthand for opulence, in addition to a strong sense of symmetry to illustrate the sense of perfection and order the aristocracy project. And much like imperialist regimes in real life, a fair, or more accurately unfair, percentage of that opulence comes from cultural appropriation. No, I'm not talking about the new Easter eggs in Luthen's shop. I'm talking about the light fixtures in Mon Mothma's apartment. The tubular wall lamps are ripped right out of Star Trek, dating all the way back to the first season of TNG. It's nice to see that after this time, Trek fans and Star Wars fans still have new things to go to war over. And Star Trek fans will win. Star Wars' tendency to glue a bunch of metal onto older tech is one of the best elements of its design. While Cassian prepares himself for the infiltration, Nemik hands him an astronavigation unit that bears an odd resemblance to older Polaroid cameras. He says that society has grown too reliant on Imperial tech, and that the best part about the older navigation unit is that its rustic nature prevents it from being intercepted or hacked. Any repairs can be done by oneself, and once you've mastered how it works, you're essentially able to live off the grid. Nemik relates the use of older tech to how the Imperial regime has ushered in a new age of fascist cultural revisionism, and how an understanding of our own history is what helps us obtain freedom. This expression of how to combat fascism in a mental sense is a poignant one. Not all wars are fought on the battlefield. Lieutenant Gorn serves as the rebellion's man on the inside, and his most impressive trait is that he's capable of being a good Imperial commanding officer while secretly supporting the rebellion. His scenes at the armory have him commanding authority and keeping the facilities in top shape, but managing to do so while expressing an understanding of his subordinates' personal needs. This is evident when he offers the shuttle guards a chance at a night off to enjoy the upcoming meteor shower, provided they repaint the shuttle ASAP. In doing so, he guarantees a skeleton crew that will provide minimal obstruction during the heist. This man manages to keep up productivity and be considerate for his underlings' needs, all while undermining Imperial authority. We need managers like this guy in an Amazon warehouse. The running gag of stormtroopers being unable to hit the broadside of a space barn is one of Star Wars' most timeless tropes. That legacy is what makes the opening scene of The Force Awakens so gripping, since we finally get to see them as a threat. But despite attempts to legitimize them, we can't stop making fun of their aim, to the point where we've come up with canonical explanations for it. Remember when George Lucas stated that the stormtroopers that chase our heroes in the original trilogy had a batch of faulty blasters? He said it, so it's canon, and it seems like the showrunners of Andor vibe with that sentiment. While Lieutenant Gorn inspects the armory grounds, he notices the guardsmen have defaced the shrine with trash can lids painted up for target practice. Keeping in line with his MO, he orders that the targets be cleaned up at once.
I'll be back in an hour. This had better be well on its way.
This interaction is incredible on two fronts, as it falls in line with him wanting to clear a path for the rebel infiltration cell, but he's also actively discouraging Imperial troops from practicing shooting. Plus, he's managing to deface a cultural landmark, which is always a plus. The final scene of the episode gives us another look into Luthen's antique shop and its back room, which means more nods to the canon. Last week we caught a glimpse of Mandalorian armor, Starkiller's assassin armor, and even Indiana Jones's whip encased in carbonite. This week continues the trend of Lucasfilm crossovers, as up on the top right shelf rests the Sankara stones from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Thankfully they don't seem to work, as you need all three to get them to glow. This film isn't even the first time Lucasfilm streams have been crossed. Remember that part of the Phantom Menace when members of E.T.'s species were members of the Galactic Senate? Naturally, one ancient relic is nestled next to another here. Anybody else spot both the Jedi and Sith Holocrons? While rarely seen in the movies, Holocrons have been a valuable method of communication for both the light and dark sides since the age of the High Republic. The existence of the Holocrons in Luthen's shop bring up many potential questions. When and where did he get these? When were they made? Do they still have messages inside of them? I hope one of them has something silly, like Count Dooku's shopping list. Everyone in Andor's Rebel Cell is decked out in ponchos, which bear similar design elements to those found in the video game Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The game's protagonist, Cal Kestis, has access to 22 different designs in that game, where each was designed to suit a different environment or ethos of a particular type of intergalactic traveler. None of the ones seen in Andor line up with any of the ones found in Fallen Order, so does that make white with red accents the official Rebel pattern? Maybe we'll see designs in this show appear in the game's sequel. Towards the end of the episode, we find Cyril brooding in his mom's apartment, wondering where his life went wrong. Again, all too relatable. As he mopes around, he pulls out an imaging device that shows us an image of teenage Cassian. We're currently unsure of when this image was taken, but considering that Cassian talked about being stationed in an Imperial youth center, we can connect the dots and determine it's definitely from that time. Funnily enough, young Cassian bears an odd resemblance to Ezra, the main character of Star Wars Rebels. Could this hint at the two being related? God, I hope not. Not even people who like the show like Ezra. While Cyril is getting chewed out by his mom in her breakfast nook, we can see there's a rustic coffee machine on the shelf behind them. This series really likes introducing foods we haven't seen in Star Wars. What's next? Star Wars energy drinks? Instead of Red Bull, do they have Red Bantha? As we noted last episode, Star Wars has real-life goats now. But it turns out we were mistaken. Those were Drey. However, much like goats, they do make milk, and apparently it tastes awful. Thinking back to how Luke complained about the blue milk his aunt and uncle fed him, was it actually that bad, or did he just have an immature palate? He did go on to drink green milk straight from the teat of whatever the hell this thing is. And that's another episode down. This show gets more engaging with every episode. Every episode introduces more layers of complexity to every character and the world they live in. What did you think of the latest episode? Was there anything we missed? Let us know in the comments below.